my friends. The night of the nights has come. The night of the nights. Open your heart and your mind. Feel free and expect the unexpected. We start in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody!
And welcome to the brand new variety show on the L&M Network, Encounters with the Neelys, with your host,
Daryl!
And Katie.
And we are doctors and reverends, too.
We wanted to bring back retroactive interactive radio to the fullest, and by doing that, we're discussing endless topics and throwbacks of the yesteryears. With that said, tonight is
Throwback Saturday night.
So what happened to the good old days when people were loyal and we all had fun and with no drama? For some people, Throwback Saturday is a day of nostalgic bliss. The world we live in modern day life is full of smartphones, robots, and frustratingly confusing technology, and remnants of the yesteryears of long forgotten in history. Turning back the hands of the Father Time brings people to a place of peace, whether it's the land before time, or the roaring 60s, where we discover the hippiedom, historical events, the diversity, conflicts, hope, anger, the music, and not to mention the dance crazes. Or what about the wild experiences of the 70s? These were the days of pet rocks and mood rings and waterbeds, crystals, incense, and wild colour. There were the fads and changing times with new troublesome events. The colourful cyberpunk times of the decades that made us in the 1980s. The 80s is not about this nostalgia necessarily. It's about the decade of people, decisions, and inventions that changed our future, told from the perspective of unknowing history makers who lived these iconic moments. It was 10 years of non-stop glamour, unchecked excess, ruthless ambition, and explosive and technological innovation that combined to produce the historical changes and global events that made us who and what we are today. Or what about the bouncy excitement of the 1990s, the last great decade? In the 90s, new attitudes, new technology equaled more freedom, more fragmentation, more diversity, but also more conflict. Moreover, that brings us today to the insanity of it all. We are 70s and 80s babies ourselves, so we wholeheartedly feel where people are coming from with all their experiences, and that's why we've decided to do something a little different for the first L&M variety show on our first live debut. It's Saturday night, so we want to see some old goodies, and so you are all in for good company to explore the nostalgia of the yesteryears and what's yet to come.
So, everybody, are you going to have a good time or what? It is that time, everyone. Time to bring in something new, something enjoyable, something a little bit of fun and crazy. Yes, I am Odin, and I declare this a music day. Katie?
So, get down sassy and get jiggy with us. Oh, and don't drink while you're listening, because we're not responsible from the damage that comes out from spitting it out while you laugh.
You know, the fun thing about this show is going to be we're going to educate you just a wee little bit. But to start the day off on a good note, we're going to talk about what happened on this day in history. Katie, you know, it really surprises me that history has meaning and it also follows a trend. The trend that I'm looking for is the impact that made us today, who we are. Let's start off with 1620. 41 pilgrims signed a compact aboard a Mayflower. Wow. Just imagine 1620 back in those days. 1648. Dutch and French agreed to divide Saint Martin Louis Island. Now think about this. That's some history to do a little study on. For our great and fearless leader, Michael Vera, here's one for you. In 1778, Irondequoit Indians in New York killed 40 people in Cherry Valley, Mass. Well, we're talking about Rochester at that point. In 1831, former slave Nat Turner, who led a violent insurrection, was executed. In 1918, Armistice Day was declared, and it was the end of World War I, and it happened at 11 a.m. on the Western Front. Now, just to think about all the interesting things that have happened in history, we might as well go to 1942, that during World War II, Germany, on this day, completed their occupation of France. In 1957, demolition began on cable car barns in Calais and Hyde. Then you have the good old era coming up, the 60s. Gordie Howe ties Richard lifetime 544 gold record. Gemini 12 was launched on a 4-day flight. Then you got your buddy, Katie, John Lennon, and Yoko Ono. Wow, they appeared nude on the cover of Two Virgins album. Let's stop them right there because we're in the 60s. So we might as well give them a little bit of taste of the 60s music. What do you think, Katie?
I think so. And we have a pretty good one coming up.
We do. Well, it's the Whiter Shade of...
Whiter Shade of Pale by...
Ooh, hold on. Let's see if maybe we can get somebody to guess the name of this artist. And then we can have a little fun.
At first just ghostly, turn the wider shade of pale. coastal virgins were leaving for the coast. And although my eyes were open, they might just as well have been closed. And so it was later, as the mirror told his tale, that her face at first just ghostly turned the wider shade of pale.
That was the 60s, one of the very biggest songs of the 60s.
Hey, that's a song that is close to my heart. Yeah, but I just have to admit that, you know, the 60s gave us a lot of things. They gave us fashion, they gave us music, they gave us the classy and love boat style automobiles, and they gave us toys and other wonderful, beautiful things.
Oh, and not to mention the largest outdoor rock concert ever.
Woodstock, baby! Yeah.
Well, they got the television shows of the 50s and the 60s. They depicted the morals and values of society. I mean, the simplicity of the lifestyles that back then was so evident at that time. You know, that the westerns on the television series were about the good guys always winning, unlike today.
Well, music and events of the day interact with one another as we progress through one of the most turbulent decades in history, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and presidential hopeful Bobby Kennedy illustrated the turbulence and the restlessness of that wonderful society. Lance Morrow said, "The real 60s began on the afternoon of November 22nd, 1963. It came to seem that Kennedy's murder opened some, malign trap door in American culture, and the wild bats flapped out." You know something? I think he told the truth.
I think the 60s had a lot of truth in it, to be really honest. I mean, in contrast, the 60s decade, was described by historians as a decade that resulted in the most significant changes in history. I mean, in 1969, the race to space was won by the US by putting man on the moon. You know, this was one event that caught more press and more attention, second only to the Vietnam War. You know, in the 1960s was also a time of turmoil, probably, due to the involvement in the war in Vietnam. You know, the magnitude, the magnitude of racial unrest during this period and social injustice because of the war in Vietnam, had a lot of impact, including the magnitude of violence on the streets in U.S. cities as well as on college campuses, protests in the war in Vietnam. It was all unprecedented. Burning of the flag and draft cards were widely used as tools for protests. And even throughout the 60s, it had its periods of unrest and violence that it was also a great decade to have grown up in, besides all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have loved to have been a baby boomer personally. I mean, anyone born between 1946 and 1964 was known as that, but they had a quality about them. They had an innocence and a desire. And that's the greatest part of the pastime of being in the 60s. I mean, one thing that people have forgotten is the ability to be more carefree and just a little bit slower life. I mean, the music was clean and fun, and we actually understood the lyrics. We knew all our neighbors on the street, where they lived. Innocence ran wild, and there was not really any violence against your fellow man. The Back to the point where you were talking about Vietnam, Katie, during that era, they were called all sorts of things, from baby killer to murderer, and most of them came back addicted or to social unrest. And the problem that you have in today's society is that we do not give them the respect and the honor that they deserve. As a veteran myself, I salute all my veterans, and I also salute those that came before us. Thank you, Vietnam veterans. Thank you, World War II veterans. If there are any World War I's out there, thank you very much. Korean War veterans, thank you. Thank you for serving. Thank you for saving my country, this country, the United States of America.
And just while we're at it, we'd like to also open up the lines for all of y'all. If you have your stories about the decades that we go through, we'd love to hear from you. Our list, you can call in. Our call-in number is 202-559-7943. Or you can pass your questions along in the chat. We'd be more than happy to, talk about it on the air. Going back to the 60s, we got to remember that the craze of the 60s was all about the school dances. The crazy dance steps that we also had. The popular dances at the time were fond memories. The stroll, the twist, the mashed potato, the pony, the hitchhike, the Freddie, and not to mention the Madison.
The Madison.
The baby boomers invented steps to add to the ridiculous steps that they already had. And they were having fun, just as it was meant to be. Games were pretty popular back then in the 1960s. Ouija and Twister were all the rage. Before the internet, board games and other types of social games were made great entertainment for adults, in particular the ladies. Bingo halls were frequented often, a pastime which has since been a steady decline. Other pastimes have also gone out of fashion, whereas some have stood the test of time. And one of those test of times is, in fact, bingo. Now, you're more likely to see someone playing that online. Stumbling through the 60s, you might recall the famous and not so famous written and spoken words that were so much part of the 60s culture. Margaret Kidder said it well with, "It was a wonderful time to be young. The 1960s didn't end until about 1976, when we believed in make love, not war. We were idealistic innocents, despite the drugs and sex." And John Lennon said, "The thing the 60s did was to show us the possibilities and the responsibilities that we all had. It wasn't the answer. It just gave us a glimpse of the possibility." Now, I don't know about possibilities, but I do know that the 60s was an event that even today's school children try to research and understand why the 60s decade had so much impact today, and they still don't understand it. We had the baby boomers had so much fun and so much innocent, and much of it was reflected in the music, like we just said before. The lyrics such as, "The message may not move me or mean a great deal to me, but it feels so groovy to say, I dig rock and roll music." From Peter, Paul and Mary's 1967 hit, "I dig rock and roll music."
I have to admit that music era is one of the most inspirational for me, because their lyrics had meaning. It told about the time. Unlike today's music, I don't even personally understand where it comes from sometimes. more about, it's like a super upgrade of what the 60s had offered. Instead of talking about love, and now we're talking about just straight going to bed. Or instead of talking about, yes, we were sitting up under a tree and we're watching the yellow submarines, today's generation, oh, we're smoking this right now and we're going to pop these pills. I'm not that kind of person. I like it slow and easy. And, you know, the lyrics were real. They were on point. I mean, today's generation, they got all these games and PlayStation and Nintendo and Xboxes. There were no games like that back then, but you had socialization. You have today 150 channels, 1,000 channels, cable. You have computers and everything else. Back then, guess what they had? They had a telephone, or you went outside.
And something as big as simple, and big, I should say, as going out for ice cream was a huge event. You know, Spyro Agnew described all the segments of the 60s with his quote, hippies, yippies, yahoos, Black Panthers, lions and tigers alike. I would swap the whole damn zoo for the kind of young Americans I saw in Vietnam.
I would too. They were real. I have no I can't even argue about it. I mean, when you take, let's go back to as a veteran, I had rather fight beside a person that's proclaiming himself a American versus someone that says I went into the military so I can go get a boob job, so I can get a sex change or something of that nature. I'm sorry, people. I'm that person that reads a lot, but come on. Back then, you had to help your family. Today, it's all about self.
Yeah, over here, well, back then they had morals and they had values and they were committed to those, and that's how family rolled. It's not to say that everything was perfect, but as sure as hell, those people who were, having a family, the idea of a parent bailing them out, bailing a baby boomer out if they broke the law or got in trouble in school was unheard of, and the parents typically sided with the law. I don't see that happening these days. Not so much anyway. Back then they had no childproof lids on the medicine bottles, no locks on the doors, cabinets, and when they rode on their bikes, it was sometimes they had baseball caps on their heads, not helmets.
Well, something, to be honest, there's one more thing you said. It was 100% correct. The baby boomers were not the ones that were going to bail out their children when they had fun. But, when they got stupid and they thought they were having fun. Okay. But on the other side, the difference between this generation today and that baby boomer generation is great because of technology. I'm not going to argue that point. But the point I want to state is that back in those days, you had families. You had communication. You sat at the dinner table together. You had a family core-based relationship. Today's generation has the boob tube, the internet, Facebook, Twitter, all these little social media gadgets. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, they don't even really know that person that they're talking to.
Yeah, well, what happened with the baby boomers? That was all. Even though I was brought up in the 80s, I was always taught. We drank from the water hose, not from a bottle. We shared one soft drink as well. It was a friendly family kind of orientated world. That's where drinking out of one Coca-Cola bottle is not going to kill you.
Oh,
now it's like, I got germs.
Oh my God, I'm going to die. I don't know. Did you spit in it? Backwash. Oh Lord. Go ahead, Katie.
Back then we ate cupcakes and white bread and real butter and real bacon, Twinkies and Ding Dongs and Kool-Aid made with real white sugar.
Hold on.
But they won't run overweight.
Oh, hold on.
You know
hold on.
why?
Why?
Because they are the ones that went out every single day. They were moving. They weren't playing their video games. And they were,
They were young.
young, carefree. Come home when the street lamps are on.
Well, you know something? The thing that you just said that got me was you said real white sugar. And like the salt, is it real today? Is there anything real?
I don't think so.
Keep going, Katie. Tell us some more about those 60s, girl. I tell you, this right here is like a reflection upon today's world.
Infants and children would ride in cars with no car seats, no booster seats, no seat belts, no airbags, bald tires, and sometimes no brakes. Riding in the back of a pickup truck on a warm day was a special treat.
I remember going in a pickup truck. See, I'm from North Carolina. I remember riding in the back of a pickup truck. That was fun back in those days. And you know what something? I think it's because the automobile industry and the safety that the United States government desires of us, that we, number one, we changed our cars from steel to tin or polyfiber, if you want to call it, which is so weak that if you did get in an accident, you're almost done for. That's the truth.
See, that's now, but back then there was no lawsuits from people falling over on the sidewalk, kids falling out of trees, and they got cut. They fell out of trees. They broke bones. Had teeth knocked out. But there was no lawsuits from those accidents. They ate worms and they made mud pies from dirt, and the worms didn't live in those people forever. I wonder if I'm still waiting for my apple tree to grow from the apple seeds that I've eaten. They were also given BB guns for their 10th birthdays, the boys. Yeah. They made up games with sticks and tennis balls, although we were told it would never happen. And they didn't poke out very many eyes either. Little League had tryouts, and not everyone made the team. But those who didn't had to learn to deal with the disappointment. Imagine that.
Oh my God, hold on. They all didn't get a trophy? They all didn't get a little medal around their neck to say they won or they were there? There was a first place, a second place, and a third place?
Some of them didn't even go in for tryouts, and then you tell somebody that is born around this day, they will sitting there sobbing their little butts, and they're crying and they're disappointed and they're, why me? But no, you learnt with that. You learnt to deal with it. You toughen up, little buttercup.
It just disturbs me that when you look at the 60s generation and you look at today's generation is what you see is an living disappointment to our forefathers, and they are weak. Katie, let's move on to the 70s, because the 60s have proven to be a society of greatness compared to what we see in this light today.
Okay. So what we will do is we'll move on to the 70s, and we'll talk a little bit more about what did happen in the 70s, and what we'll do now is we'll bring you in a bit of a blast from the past that y'all all know, and I'm sure that you'll be wanting to sing along with. So here goes. I'm not even going to introduce this song.
Oh, we can introduce this one because this one is a very powerful one. But guess what? I'm going to dedicate this one to the Queen, Miss Adonna, in the L&M radio chat room.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see. I'm just a poor 'cause I'm easy come, easy go, little high. Any way the wind blows doesn't really matter to me. Mama just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled my trigger, now he's dead. Mama, life had just begun, but now I've gone and thrown it all away. Mama, didn't mean to make you cry. If I'm not back again this time tomorrow, carry on, carry on, as if nothing really matters. Too late, my time has come. Sent shivers down my spine, body's aching all the time. Goodbye, everybody, I've got to go. Gotta leave you all behind and face Mama, wind blows, I don't wanna die. Sometimes wish I'd never been born at I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening me. Galileo, Figaro. Magnifico! I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. He's just a poor boy from a poor family, sparing his life from this monstrosity. Easy come, easy go, will you let me go? Bismillah, no, we will not let you go. Let him go! Bismillah, we will not let you go. Let him go! Bismillah, we will not let you go. We'll not let you go. Never, will not let you go. Oh, mamma mia, mamma mia. Mamma mia, let me go. Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me. For me. For me. So you think you can stop me and spit my eye? So you think you can love me and leave me to die? Oh, baby, can't do this to me, baby. Just
we're back.
Oh God!
We
I remember
knew
this one.
you'd have some fun with that great classic. Now, don't forget, folks. Don't forget, we have a live listen chat room over at the L&M Radio Network. I forgot to mention it earlier before, so you can go to that at lnmradionetwork.com and go to the chat and listen button and sign up there. Come in, it's absolutely free. Also, please donate and or subscribe to keep us on the air. Without you, we're all listener supported. Without you, we would cease to be existing. Also, I would like to mention, if you have any guest or show suggestions you need to contact us, you may email us at encounterswiththeneelys@gmail.com. So moving on now to the 70s.
The 70s.
The
Hey,
70s.
I was born in 1970, y'all.
What did happen in the 1970s? Well, we had women's liberation, more awareness towards nuclear activity, environmentalism, more sophisticated rock and roll, and the oil crisis.
And the ending of the Vietnam War, and we had a somewhat disappointing president named Jimmy Carter. But we're not going to go there, are we? Peanuts!
So 1975 brought the end to the Vietnam conflict with the fall of Saigon. Lots of wars were being waged on the planet involving Russia and Afghanistan and Arabia and Israel. People's awareness and anger over the Vietnam conflict resulted in massive anti-war protest marches that often turned ugly. Kent State University ended with 4 deaths. Mandatory busing was initiated in an effort to desegregate schools. This too led and often resulted also in violence.
Microwave ovens, home VCRs. Yeah, I remember the old Beta. Yeah, that was good days when you can actually see a movie and it was clear. And not scratching up like CDs today. The first general microprocessor and C programming language appeared in the 70s. Yeah, I'm right on that. Yeah, in the 70s. The discovery of hippiedom, which began in the mid-60s, sort of waned itself down in the mid-70s. Discovery of black holes by Stephen Hawking came into people's awareness and heightened it about the universe. Hold up. Disco. Yeah, the disco movement reached boiling levels in America in that later half of the decade. The 70s culture seemed to bring out more mindful generation. Yeah, we were thinking just a little bit, but maybe it's because of the 60s generation that we started thinking more in the 70s. And, the more revolutionary thoughts and ideas, and also more ideas on conspiracies came out during the 70s as well. Throughout that 70s, we had unemployment, inflation heights. The era was a grand party time for many. But on the other side, it was, a monotonous time. I still remember when I was young, I looked at the TV and I saw Jimmy Carter standing there with, I forgot the Prime Minister of Israel, but it was Begin and Sadat. That was it. Begin and Sadat. And he got him to sign that accord together. I remember that year. That was probably one thing I do remember about the 70s, being so young. On you, Katie.
Stars were electric and the whole world looked and acted as if it had been plugged in. Furniture styles, quite unlike the 60s, lost the space age look and returned to more conservative styles, only splashed with loud colour and wild designs. Neutral colours like orange, browns and rust and other earthy tones were engaging and quite popular. Swag lamps and beanbag chairs were also in. Beanbags were also found in many households of young and lower income people.
What about the lava lamp?
Oh, the lava lamp came in too.
And what was the other thing that I just didn't remember? Oh, that's one thing I can never forget. The swing between you lay in between the hammocks.
Hammocks.
Yes, that was during that era too. I mean, that's
Even waterbeds were back then.
Oh, gee.
The days of the waterbed.
Yeah, just don't put a hole in it. Go ahead, Katie.
Oh dear. But giant consoles invaded the planet, bringing us magnificent, decorative cabin-like sets that were so ugly today.
Oh, yeah, even had the plastic over the chairs. I never forget that, too. That thick plastic you cover your chair.
And the days of wallpaper.
Oh, God.
Shoot me now. Oh dear. But they still have that today, just to cover up things, but okay. But you could back then you could buy a black and white TV. Many people had at least one in their home as a second, and they at least had another secondary TV for the kids' or bedroom. Prices of televisions back then ranged anywhere from $300 to $500 range, and the black and white TVs cost anywhere between $88 to $150. So the first one was coloured. The Great 70s experience. The Great 70s experience also included clock radios. That was signature of the 70s.
Oh, God.
Pretty much everybody had one.
Yeah, I remember that.
Bizarre inventions and crazy cultural icons. Fads included some of the most unforgettable items: lava lamps, adhesive daisies for cars, clogs, pet rocks, mood rings, and crystals.
I had a pet rock.
I had one too, and that was in the 90s.
I lost mine. I wasn't even starving.
And all of those little fads were all the rage.
That was cool.
Also, one of the biggest slogans of the 1970s was "Have a nice day."
You're an Aussie. Say it right.
Have a nice day.
All right, mate. Okay, Governor.
That was the simplistic yellow happy face. I swear I've seen that in some movie.
The happy face? The
The
yellow
happy,
face?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, hold on. I'll remember it later.
Forest!
Forest!
Run, Forest, run!
Oh, God. No, you didn't. Forrest got me. Go ahead.
Oh, my God. But, sickeningly sweet and happy faces appeared everywhere. They were spray painted on buildings, finger drawn in the dust of automobiles, drawn in the paint legs of Levi's, and simply overmarketed in stores. A second runner-up in the "I get cavity just hearing it" category would be the classic Coke commercial stating, "I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony."
I would like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. Yeah, come on now. Everybody remembers that song. That's classic. And that's when Coca-Cola had all that good stuff instead of aspartame and, saccharin. And it was real then. It had sugar. In a glass bottle. And you remember, and guess what? Here's something that I know you don't remember because you were too young. They actually had a 6-pack glass 2-liter bottles of Coca-Cola.
Wow. I don't think I've ever seen one.
It was the best thing you've ever had. And it was cheap too. With real sugar. Hold on. I'm going to leave that alone.
Do you know what else was big back then?
What?
Streaking.
Well, I've mooned a couple of people, but not streaked.
No, streaking. Ray Stevens even wrote a song about it.
Really?
Yeah, streaking was the fad of the dashing naked through a very public space. This fad became very big in the 70s, an almost memorable moment. Who was a man who streaked the Academy Awards while David Niven was presenting. Do you remember that?
I don't think I was watching TV back then. I was out playing. Or in bed sleep or getting ready for school.
And the fashion, of course, that took off like a rocket. The weirdest array of hairstyles and fashions received a major jump start in the 70s. Geometric patterns of circles, stripes, and blocks and color jumped out at us from the clothing racks. Shorter guys had made it with shoes sporting giant heels just to make a little taller. Sounds like Tom Cruise. Oh. Tom Cruise still wears them to this very day. Polyester was the key phrase in any household. The dread leisure suits reigned. Giant sunglasses balanced themselves on the bridges of the 70s noses. The world of fashion had a stroke. It had had it in living colour, blazing colour. Big hair was also in. It was stacked, packed, teased, moose, curled, permed,
Lord.
and large enough to hide a Volkswagen Beetle underneath it.
Oh my God, you talking about the Bush era. The long hair. All the way down to your knees. Hold on.
Big hair was the statement for many 70s gals. The trend carried on even towards the later 80s, but nothing was wild as the 70s.
Well, you know, I like to say it's time to move out of the 70s quickly because I cannot see myself wearing a fro. So, Katie, how about this? Let's just roll straight into the 80s with the song that I love so much.
And what's that?
It's called The Last Domino.
Ooh.
You know, it's got my man Phil the King Collins, and it's done with the power of Genesis. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start you off. We're going to have this song as our commercial break because it's a song worthwhile listening to. Here we go.
Enjoy.
Grey of evening fills the room. There's no need to look outside to see or feel the rain. And I reach across to touch her. love you tonight, for will it last forever? Will it last forever?
We hope you enjoyed that song, Last Domino, Genesis.
Part 1 and part 2 now.
Oh yeah, you got to have the second part as well. You know, our kids actually like that song, believe it or not.
Hey, that was my theme song. I mean, that song was one of those songs that would keep you just wondering. And knowing about Phil Collins and his history, there's no problem in understanding that song completely.
There's a lot of truth in that song, yeah. Well, the 80s. Here we go. The 80s, the me decade. Woohoo!
It's all about me.
Me.
It's all about... Oh, yeah.
Me.
It is all about you.
Me. I'm an 80s girl.
Okay.
Yes, that's me. Okay, so the fingerprints of the decade, best known for Pac-Man and personal computers, everywhere. Yeah, those little pills and ghosts.
Yes, that's my game. I used to rock that machine.
Yeehaw!
Donkey Kong too. Go ahead.
The first launch of NASA's space shuttle was triggered a technological explosion in the global communications, and that now makes our worldwide love affair with smartphones and the internet possible. This was when Madonna rolled out on stage in a wedding dress at a music awards show. It sent shockwaves through the celebrity-hungry world that we can't get enough of Gangnam Style and Lady Gaga today.
I think Madonna was the original, and everybody else is trying to duplicate, imitate, or try to be something of that nature. Personally, Madonna couldn't sing for crap, but she was an entertainer complete. So if anybody got something to say about that, speak up now, ever hold your peace.
Oh dear. And to mention again, our call-in number is 202-559-7943, and we have a call coming in right now. Hello, who do we have here?
Hello, Katie. This is Jessica from Wisconsin.
Hi.
Hey, Jessica.
Hello, Daryl. Thank you for your service. I have to get that out, saying thank you. Thank you for serving our military and being a veteran. Thank you.
Hey, I love my Navy. I still celebrate it. And you know something? There's one thing I have to admit. In America, veterans have a good name. But the only downfall is this generation from 2000, I say 2000 up, they have a fear of becoming anything that's part of quote-unquote the military, or they quote-unquote as they were taught. They will want to fight for that president or fight for this person. No, you're fighting for your country. You stand by your
Exactly.
country. You live and breathe in this country, and you also have a flag, an American flag, that you need to salute, stand up to, and be proud of. Thank you very much. And I'm an American.
There you go. We
had to
are
say it.
Americans.
I
We
had
are.
to say it, Jessica. These kids are weak.
Mm-hmm.
We're having fun today, so let's get going.
So you forgot one entertainer, the
Okay.
greatest of all, mine. I have a tattoo of him. You have to say the greatest entertainer is my Michael Jackson. I mean, he invented the moonwalk.
See,
yeah.
now you talking about my boy Michael Jackson. Now,
And my man.
No,
He's
oh,
my
I'm sorry.
man too,
Your
so we
man.
gotta share.
you
know?
man, I know. We love him. We love him
Oh,
too.
we do. If we sat here and spoke of all the greats that were alive still today, like Prince, Michael Jackson,
Oh God.
Freddie Mercury.
Oh God. Don't go Freddie on me, because I will cry.
Oh.
We would
See, I was
we'd be-
hoping you would play the from Freddie, the one that's always played.
Oh, if you want to email us, we can actually put in a request if you really want to. I mean, this whole show is all about the retro. We're bringing back the yesteryears. So yes, we can take requests. If you give us an email at encounterswiththeneelys@gmail.com, we'd be more than happy to have a look at it and put up your request for next week.
Oh, well, next week you're playing our Michael Jackson. Yeah, I'll be emailing you guys. You got, see, now, I was born in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
And my first record album was Michael Jackson's The Bad album. I mean, the 80s was from 60s, 70s, and 80s best music. And the 90s is going back and forth. There's still quite a few good 90s. And then after that, well, yeah.
All downhill,
Yeah,
right?
went downhill from there.
I mean, I'm like begging for 80 music stations and different digital stations. Play the 60s, play the 70s, play the 80s. Yeah, I could go for the 90s. I mean, like Katie, me and you are probably the same age. We grew up the same time. I mean, we did have some good 90s. I mean, you can't complain about that. Then once you hit 2000s, well, yeah, it went downhill.
Yeah, and of course it's it's 2017 now, and we're still obsessed with the 80s. We really are. It was the decade of excess, and it was also the glory days of the me generation. That formed the whole 80s culture. Life was changing really quickly back then.
Well, hold on. Let me say it nicely. Back in the 80s, you can go to a club and see the artist. Today, you go to a club and you expect a gunfight.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
See, the 80s was evolving. It was evolving. And just like every other decade previously, it was evolving. They had a new president. They had new music, new technology, new fashions. And probably up new hairstyles, but,
Oh, come on.
Evolving
You know,
hairstyles.
Evolving hairstyles.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
Don't
my
forget the
gosh, the
piercings.
hairstyles.
Oh,
That that was the worst in styles. Out of all the decades, that was the worst.
and then you have on top of that the spandex.
Oh.
The Olivia
Oh.
Newton-John.
Come on, let's get physical. Physical.
Oh my
But
god.
everyone had a Walkman. Like I still gave my Walkman to my dad to keep, so I won't lose it. Because you show it to like the youngers, and like, what's a tape? What's this? What's that? What's a VCR?
I see. I grew up with vinyls. So I grew up with vinyls, and I didn't have a cassette tape until at least the mid to late 90s. I was living in the country, so I was inept to everything. But no, I didn't know what any of that was. And then it wasn't until 2005 I finally got my first Discman.
Whoa.
Oh wow.
I was behind everybody. I still was living very much in with the 80s music, the 80s everything, well and truly into the 90s, until the Spice Girls came along in the 90s.
Let's don't talk about the Spice
Oh,
Girls.
yeah.
Please don't. Oh my god.
We all had our
Okay,
moments.
Katie.
Yes.
Question: Were you an NSYNC girl or a Backstreet Boys girl?
I was a Backstreet Boys girl.
Oh, I was.
hated
Well,
NSYNC.
okay. It was a tour. Like I was like more of an NSYNC, but I liked the Backstreet Boys, and it was a hard pick. So,
Oh my
but the
God.
one thing that
I didn't like either
was
group.
coming back out is the vinyls. The records are coming back out. The
They-
record players.
They really, a lot of people have got collections and collections of them, and most of them are collecting dust. But the vinyls that I grew up with were not just the music, they were the old. I don't know if you remember them. They were the kids' stories on vinyls.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Yeah.
Stories, the
Ooh.
children's stories
Yeah,
on
yeah.
vinyls. That's what I grew up with, and I still remember it to this very day.
Oh, I remember. I missed the headphones back then. They were amazing, and you could hear out of them crystal clear, and you could feel the bass, the music, and just everything. And I remember, being 3 years old, handling vinyls like carefully. Like I knew they were so important. Unlike some kids would break them, not me. No, this was like, you got to be really, really careful. And where I remember having a record, my brother had a record player with a radio and a cassette. And he said, too, it had an 8-track in it. I don't remember that part. But when he would be up in school, and I would plug it in, and we had those long cords, and my room was right next to it, and he had it where it was short enough where I could put the record in it, and I would go all over the place. I mean, back then, they built things to last, too. I just, and then the Walkman, and then when it came in the 90s, it was the CDs and the boombox, where with the CD and tape player. They, like I said, they don't make stuff like they used to.
No, they don't. That's exactly right. They don't. And back in the 80s, the 1980s was actually focused on power and money and social image. And since this was a time where abstinence was not practiced and many people were promiscuous, the AIDS epidemic also started back then in the United States. We're now using many sayings that we were using, like wannabe and sup and noob came out of the 80s as well. We have another caller coming in. I believe it's Ira.
It is indeed. Hi. You guys were talking about records and record players and stuff, and I had to toss in. I used to have one of those small portable record players that played the 45s and the 33s and stuff on it. And man, I loved that thing. I used to use that thing all the freaking time. I had this huge collection of 45s.
Wow. And do you know that what was the slogan that on cable television of that time in regarding music? Do you remember?
Video killed the radio star?
Nope. I want my MTV.
I want my MTV, exactly. But that was the first song that MTV played on their station.
Oh, well, there you go.
Video killed the radio star. And at this point, it's funny because now they've switched away from doing music videos into doing nothing but reality TV shows.
Yeah. And it's all sex, drugs, and rock and roll history repeating itself over and over again. We're going back to the 60s again, but just not so. It's glorious. More in you.
It's not as glorious as it was.
It's more promiscuously in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more in your face.
Indeed. And did you guys end up dropping Jessica? I'm not sure. Is she still on with us? Or?
I think the call got dropped for some reason.
I think it did too. Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and hang up, but and let her call back in if she wants to. But I just, you guys mentioned the records and.
Oh, no problem.
Those days of the 45s.
We're glad you called in.
It's a good premiere show. You guys are doing a great job. Keep up the great work.
Kudos, Ira. Thank you.
Have fun, guys.
All right. I believe we have Jessica back.
Yes.
Hi, sorry.
I was like, hello.
We lost you.
Is Ira still on or no?
No, he just left. He just wanted to chime in to talk about the vinyls.
Right. And I was listening to that, and MTV too. Yeah, that I have memories. I was like, I couldn't wait for the next music video to come on and stuff. And yeah, now it started like early 2000s that the reality TV started.
Mm-hmm.
I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, the noughties was big on reality TV, but not so much in the 90s. Not so much at all. The noughties was the decade between year 2000 and 2010.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So, but you remember the pop stars that came out in the 90s when they were wearing metal hairbands?
Mm-hmm.
And all electronic and new wave music.
And don't forget.
And boom boxes.
Boom boxes.
Everybody got to have boom boxes.
Who got the loudest?
Yep.
And the biggest dance moves. Breakdancing was big back then too.
Yeah, then it was freestyle.
Yeah, freestyle. B-boy.
B-boy.
B-girl.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Well, wait. So when did the breakdance came around? Was it the 80s or the 90s?
I think the 80s, if I remember correctly. Breakdancing is 80s.
Breakdancing is late 70s, early 80s. Because you remember the Fat Boys came... Oh, we can't talk about that. That's next week. I'm giving a hint.
Uh-oh.
No, we'll let you know what next week's shows are going to be all about. The reminiscence of...
Oh, yeah.
I'll hold my tongue now.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Oh, I won't. But you remember the television at the time? We had TV series and movies, including characters of like the animated variety.
Oh yeah, but hold on. My favorite show was Airwolf. Jan Michael Vincent, the helicopter. Oh, and the Greatest American Hero. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. Yeah, I'll never forget that show.
Oh, I see now. TV shows. There were actually TV shows It's nothing like now.
They were, and
mean,
if I look back at the TV shows that were back then, yes, they were done marvelously great. But then I look at them and go, what kind of acting is that? And what kind of set did they use?
Heart to heart.
It's really, really raw. It really is.
I mean
the 80s, without the 80s would not, where would we be without Marty McFly and Freddy Krueger and Papa Smurf and Jem or the Ghostbusters for that fact?
Hey, you know something? Marty McFly made me happy. That was the first time I'd ever seen a DeLorean. Yeah. DeLorean sports car was actually on TV.
Oh, here we go. Of course, the great.
Okay, so movies: Top Gun, Dirty Dancing. You could go on and on.
And of course, the great and famous Ira is back as well. Of course, he heard some words.
You guys are talking about TV shows and all that kind of stuff. I got to tell you, moonlighting.
Moonlighting. I remember that.
Oh, Silver Shepherd and Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis got his start in moonlighting. Got famous in moonlighting, you know. And then when he went into doing Die Hard and the action movies from there, everybody was like, wait, isn't this the moonlighting guy?
Lord, y'all bringing back memories.
Do you know it was up until about 5 years ago? I was watching reruns on Australian TV of Moonlighting. It's still being shown around the world.
It's a great show. It was the best. The Greatest American Hero. You were talking about that. That's on Netflix right now. Actually, they have it on Netflix, or is it Hulu? No, it's Hulu. They have it on Hulu. Great show. Loved that show.
I wonder if they're actually. Do you know? Because we're still in 2017, and we're still talking about the 1980s as if it was yesterday.
Mandela effect.
And they're still bringing back.
Well, you know, it's weird. It's weird because whenever anybody mentions the 90s, I always feel like it was 10 years ago. You know, like I totally skipped the noughts.
Yes, I feel the same way. And it's like, wait a minute, hold up. 97, they say, it's 97's 20 years. I'm thinking,
but 97 seems to stand out.
Jolene said it's the same way for her, and she was born in 89. I mean, she was a 90s kid, you know, so for her, it's like the same way. So, yeah, it's really bizarre. And yet, you know, here I am, I'm 46, and you know, I'm looking back on things, and it's like I totally skipped the zeros, you know, for whatever reason. The zeros just aren't there in my brain as much. It's odd. Maybe it's because of all the reality TV that came out in the zero.
You know, that doesn't surprise me at all. That really does not surprise me at all.
I got a couple other 80s shows for you. So in the 80s, also Dark Shadows came out.
Dark Shadows.
Oh,
you remember Dark Shadows?
What was the other one? The Crook
And
Keeper.
you can't forget as well the awesome show that started in the 80s, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Started in 84.
Yep.
Well, even then, Star Wars didn't come out until the 90s, did it?
No, 79.
Star Wars was 77 when the first one came
you're
out.
right.
Oh, wow.
80,
the original.
81 is when the second one came out, and 84 is when the third one came out.
Wow.
Don't forget Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Indeed, yes.
I must be old. You know what? Looking back at these decades, it makes me feel old. You know, I'm still stuck back in the 80s.
It's the Mandela effect.
I mean, you gotta remember too, is like it was good. It was good TV and music.
It really was
nothing.
And you know what?
Nothing.
It became you know, a larger than life lifestyle. You know, where Michael Jackson and Madonna were the king and queen and pop.
And you had Prince as the Prince of Pop.
Yep. And don't forget, now listen, if we're going to talk about the 80s, you've got to talk about the best part of the 80s. Saturday morning cartoons. G.I. Joe, He-Man, Thundar the Barbarian.
Yeah!
On and on and on. All the Thundercats, I mean, all of those great 80s cartoon shows. The Transformers, I mean, it's
The
like
Turtles,
awesome.
Yeah,
Exactly. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then like for girls, you had for the little ones was the pony.
Yeah, My Little Pony. Rainbow Bright.
Pony.
Rainbow Bright.
I
Rainbow
couldn't stand
Bright.
those
Rainbow
shows.
Bright.
And don't forget the age of Japanese anime too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep,
because
exactly.
Akira.
going into the 90s, we had Sailor Moon.
No.
Yes.
80s
Sailor
we had
Moon.
Akira.
80s
The
had
best
Akira.
Japanese
You had
anime there
Vampire
is.
Hunter D. All that kind
And
of great stuff.
then you had Bugs Bunny and the real, cartoons like Bugs Bunny and Daffy and the DuckTales, and then
You got to
DuckTales
remember that
was
pretty
around.
much all of us grew.
DuckTales was 90s.
90s. Okay.
Yeah.
See, like I say, like being in that middle is like, okay, you kind of grew up with both,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when the mid '80s came around, I was in high school. I graduated in '89, and I remember like back in '86, '87, sitting down watching GI Joe. Come on, it was right after school. We had this big set of TV shows that came on right after school was over. There was like GI Joe. They did Thundar. They did Thundercats. They did. What was G-Force is what it was called back then, but now it's Battle Beyond the Stars or something like that. Do you remember that one, Daryl? Battle Beyond the Stars?
Do you remember that one, Daryl?
Yeah, I remember it. I mean, what I'm thinking about was what was that show? It was He-Man, She-Ra.
She-Ra was the girls' version of He-Man.
Right.
Yeah, it was like literally a duplicate of He-Man. They just changed the names and places. That's it.
I guess that was the year of when they had the dual, the male and the female side of cartoons as well. But
Yeah,
also, you also still had Saturday morning cartoons.
Well, yeah, exactly. But the one thing I thought was interesting, people still watch the whole public service announcements that were after the cartoons. Because remember, back in the '80s, they had the law here in America that said that if a TV show was geared towards children, it had to have a moral message to it in order to be legally able to be aired. So all of those cartoons in the '80s, they had that little 2-minute time where they, at the end of it, they would do the little message at the end, don't drink and drive, or don't shoot this gun in your eye, or things, the stupidest things sometimes, but they always had those because of that law that was there. And then when the '90s came around, they eliminated that law, and so the moral messages of cartoons started to fall to the wayside, and that's when we started to see all of the other stuff that started to come about starting in the '90s that didn't have that kind of gearing towards it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember that. I mean, in the '80s, in terms of technology and where things were going, a lot of things were seen as futuristic. I mean, you got to remember that the '80s brought in the high tech decade.
Well, shoot,
Yeah,
we had
exactly.
Ronald Reagan and the Star Wars Defense Plan.
Yeah,
we had
exactly.
Also,
so the big push was for tech.
CompUSA was dominating at that time.
Well, I mean, with the U.S. Correct me if I'm wrong. The U.S. was that was in recession that lasted until about 1983.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, Reagan brought us out of it.
But a big push was towards making technology more readily available. So that's when we started seeing the home PCs start to come out.
Yeah, the Commodore 64,
saw,
the first Apple Macintosh, and the IBM 5150.
The IBM PC. The Commodore, got its big hit back then, and then the follow up, the Amiga. You know.
And then
I remember the first computer I had was a Commodore 64. Man, I loved my
Who didn't?
I loved my. In fact, I still have floppy disks from my Commodore from way back then sitting in my closet. I will never get rid of them.
that was the first computer I learnt on. And then I had to figure out the DOS codes and
Yep. And those screens were like thick and big and clunky.
Oh yeah, the old CRTs. Yep.
And you got to remember that Motorola gave us one of the first mobile phones, the Dynatac 8000X.
Oh,
Yep.
hold on. The one that
The car
worked.
phone,
The
yeah.
big car phones and the bag phones that could weigh as much as 25 pounds.
Yeah. I
And
never-
that was in
Don't
the
forget
80s.
beepers. Beepers.
Yep, that was in the 80s. Beepers were starting to get a prevalence at that point in time. Yeah, the wealthiest people got those and do it. Yeah, and they were big in the 90s, as Jolene just said through her chicken chewing.
Mm-hmm.
I still got my
Yep.
blue one.
You know, another show that flitted into my mind here, guys, from the 80s. One of my all-time favorite TV shows. I still go back and watch it sometimes because it was such a great show. Night Court.
I don't remember that show.
Which one?
You don't remember Night Court?
Mm-mm.
No, I don't.
It must be because
I don't either.
It must be.
Oh my God! Where
Ow.
were you people during that? Daryl, you tell me you remember Night Court
Hold on. I'm
with the
actually
big tall guy
thinking.
bull. It was
I remember
they
that
took place
show.
in the courtroom at night. You know,
Hold on now. What show was it?
Night Court.
Oh, I remember Night Court. That was one of the famous ones to see every afternoon for a while, and then they brought it to the evening hours after it was what was it? Jefferson, San Francisco Sun, and yeah, Night Court. That was the late night one. And don't forget, during that same time period, we had Benny Hill.
Benny Hill was great. Didn't Roseanne get it?
Roseanne got
started
started in the 80s too.
It was
I
87.
remember
that they got started.
Roseanne.
Yeah, we have to remember Roseanne.
Man, I'll tell you what.
I
Roseanne,
remember Roseanne.
Roseanne is like a household thing here, man. We watch it almost every day because it's always playing on the TV over there with Mom. And I loved Roseanne. It was actually one of my all-time favorite shows. I was like, God, it's like I'm watching my life right here on the
And
screen.
don't forget
And
Three's Company.
It's coming back.
And it's
it's
coming
coming
back,
back.
yeah, which is gonna be interesting. I don't know if I'll like it, but yeah.
And don't forget Three's Company and the Ropers.
And
I never liked Three's Company, and I never liked the Ropers. I love Don Knotts, as an actor. He's one of my favorite actors, but I never cared for those shows. I don't know, just
I
weird.
loved MASH. I love MASH.
Oh.
That was in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, that started in
was awesome.
'77, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another one of my favorite TV shows during that era, I have to say it, was Walker, Texas Ranger. Or was that 90s?
Chuck Norris. Yeah,
Chuck Norris.
Chuck
It was
Norris.
okay. It was okay.
I mean,
it was okay. I didn't hugely care for it, but
I like them.
Well, the 90s too had still good TV too.
It was actually a drift from the 80s to the 90s. Because
yeah. I
after
mean, you had stuff like Step by Step,
by Step.
Family Matters,
the growing years.
You know,
Cosby
then-
Show, Growing
Full House.
Years, yeah.
And that was the
Growing
90s.
Pains.
Growing
It
Pains,
was
that's
the
the one.
Growing Pains, yeah.
Growing Pains was '80s, yeah.
And then there
Adam's
was
Family.
George
Doogie
and Mildred.
Howser.
Doogie Howser, that was a really good show. They actually just added that one to Hulu here a couple of months ago. If you guys want to go and watch it,
Oh,
Doogie Howser, really really interesting show. I like that one.
I got the show of all shows, MacGyver.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you mention that, Daryl. I've been actually rewatching Stargate SG-1 for like the 5th time.
Yeah, I love
and,
it.
Richard Dean Anderson. I love the interaction with Richard Dean Anderson and how they played on his MacGyver role, through that show as well. Shoot, I'm gonna see if I can find this quote. Let me go ahead. I'm gonna see if I can find this
Okay.
quote here.
Oh, and then he was in the big medical shows too. ER and Chicago Hope. Now, I want to say ER, didn't ER started in 89? I want to say.
ER started in
That
88, if I remember right, yeah.
I mean, I was an ER girl. I loved ER. Like, all of us, like, oh, do you like Carter? I was Dr. Green. I loved Dr. Green. Yeah.
Here, I just sent you a quick YouTube video. It's only like 23 seconds long. This is Amanda Tapping from Stargate SG-1 talking to Richard Dean Anderson, who of course is the guy that plays MacGyver. And this was from a blooper reel from one of the episodes. It's hilarious the way that she talks here.
Okay, we're just loading up.
And you can't figure this one out? We got belt buckles and shoelaces and a piece of gum. Build a nuclear reactor, for crying out loud.
And of course I kill everybody, right?
You used to be MacGyver, McGadget, McGimmick. Now you're Mr. McUseless. Dear God. Stuck on a glacier with MacGyver!
Hopefully it works.
Oh, geez, that brings back memories. That really does. Hey, guys, we're just gonna keep moving here. And I was gonna bring in some of the excessive use of slang and popular sayings. Do you guys remember any of them?
Which one?
Slang.
80s or 90s?
What do you remember using? 80s.
80s
what's
slang.
cracking, man?
Oh boy, radical. That was a big one.
Okay, what about bag your face? Airhead. Buggin'.
Airhead. Yeah, I remember airhead.
You be bugging?
Bite me.
Bite me, I used a lot.
Home fry.
Yeah, I used them.
Home slice. Homie. Homeboy. Home steak. Home chicken. Home bread. Home girl.
All the home stuff.
Home, home.
Tubular, that's one.
Oh, what about what's crack-a-lackin'?
How about flipping to the other side? Gag me with an entire place setting. My God. The Valley Girl movement, man. That was in the 80s. Oh my God.
Do you know
the 80s movement of the Valley Girls? It was everywhere.
Yep.
My God.
And you know one of the phrases that's still used to this very day from that?
Whatever.
No. BFF.
Yep, BFFs.
Oh, yeah.
BFF came out in the 80s. What about noob?
Now,
Noob
was brought about because of video games.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the biggest ones. Got its start there. Yep, noob.
And another one that's still used to this day. I don't know if I've seen it in a regular occurrence, but you just got burnt.
Yep.
And take a chill pill.
The shorthand of burn.
Yep.
Whatchamacallit, that was another one.
And wasn't Wayne's World during that time period too?
Wayne's World. What's that? I thought that was Wayne's World was the 90s, wasn't it?
No, Wayne's World was 89,
edging,
if I remember right.
Yeah, edging into the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now we're going to actually play another song.
Oh my God, another song.
And
well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and take off here, guys. But again, I just, I had to come in and.
No worries.
You guys brought up the shows, man. So,
oh, that's the whole point. We like to bring the nostalgia back. All right. You have a good night, Ira.
You too, guys.
Have a good one, Ira. Well, I'm going to keep on listening so others can call in, and I will send you guys an email later on.
No problem. We look
Keep
forward
going.
to hearing from you, Jessica.
Keep her moving. Thank you. Bye.
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 Okay, so the next song that we have up, Daryl has a little background for y'all, a little excerpt.
Well, just to let you know, back in the good days, I was living at DuPont Circle here in Washington, D.C., and I used to love playing the keyboard. In fact, I was, a keyboardist, very good, well-talented, and I auditioned for NXS. And that was back in 88, 89, after they just brought out their album. And then a year later, they collapsed as a band, and I was accepted, but they had collapsed. I was doing practice with the band here in D.C. when they came in, and, I was loving it. I thought I was going to be the next, big-time keyboardist. Maybe I can get to the Depeche Mode or the Pet Shop Boys. I'm sorry, let me say it right. The P Shop Boys. Well, for you today, I'm going to bring you one of my favorite songs by NXS. Let's see if we can figure this one out, ladies and gentlemen. Never Tear Us Apart.
Don't ask me what you know is true. Don't have to tell you I love your precious heart. I was standing, you were there. Two worlds collided, and they could never tear us apart. We could live for 1,000 years, but if I hurt you, I make wine from your tears. I told you that we could fly, 'cause we all have wings, but some of us don't know why. I was standing, you were there. Two worlds collided, and they could never, ever tear us apart. I was standing, you were there. Two worlds collided, and they could never tear us apart. You were standing, I was there. Two worlds collided, and they could never tear us apart. I was standing.
Late Night in the Midlands covers everything. I mean, we really do. Some guests talk about UFOs, some discuss the paranormal, while others just want to share the truth with us. However, on occasion, we get some who make incredible claims.
That technology cannot be used to jump through time without possibly blowing the Earth up entirely.
My wife is a clone also that was from an Anunnaki.
We've got actually portals in here where we have like 200 herd of buffalo disappear and come back.
Yeah, disappeared from Yellowstone and then reappeared at Standing Rock.
So,
and was given a tour of where they actually create the clones. And actually, I was given the tour by a great alien.
I've been to a Stargate.
Some hate it when we ask for evidence.
I'm not here to prove it to anybody. I'm here to do my job.
Let those individuals show us what they can do.
All right, and so let me ask now, do you have another book that you've got out there too, right? It wasn't just that one, right? Don't you have another book? Now, what about the Preventing Computer Fraud? What about that book?
That is not my work.
Oh, okay.
I know whose work it is.
And how does a clone know they're cloned? You know? Help me understand. I'm trying.
You don't know that you're a clone.
But you do know. Michael Brazard?
Don't pay attention. He's my brother.
I hate it when they get their facts wrong or intentionally mislead.
Most of the people coming back into NASA a lot were actually indigenous people.
Hitting bases as we can, taking them out. Putin at least has control over the military up there to actually do the scans to track where these planes land to give us the sites to go hit.
Yes, of course, they throw in some real issues to suck you into all the lies they spread, but NASA was built by Nazis. In Russia, working with Patrick? Come on.
Pedophile rings, the Martinsville case, the Pizzagate stuff, the court system.
And every now and then they cross that line and we are forced to expose them for the frauds they are.
And I get that all the time.
So we do. You're misleading people, and I don't think that's right. I mean, you're not really John Teeter. Your real name is Dana Lee Stern Sr. And so I'm wondering how you go from that to being somebody who was cloned. Hey, did you hear the paper, everybody? What are you doing, reading off your script, you piece of garbage, you? You're not stopping Planet X. You're not going out and killing Rothschilds. You're not doing all this stuff. It's just, and these pictures, I mean, they're just pictures. They're not proof. There's no proof of nothing. And then you got a guy calling in who's practically in tears because he wants to see again, and he's being told to steam his butt, and that could help him see again. Folks, if you believe a 52-year-old man is going out into space and stopping planets and changing parts on Saturn. Karen, your kids weren't stolen from you. You lost them in a custody battle. I mean, I know this. Anybody who wants to do their research could look and they could find this out for themselves. But you know what? People don't want to know the truth. They want the wild story. Now, as far as Avalon Soul goes, buddy, you might as well admit it because you're busted too. We know who you are, what your real name is. I've got everything right here, as a matter of fact. I could show you. Want to know who he really is? Here you go. How about Chili Shock? Just go ahead and read it. There it is. I'm not making this up. Yeah, that's right. Take a hike, lady. Enough of your lies. I've listened to enough, you and your steaming asses. People are calling with real questions, and you're leading them on to disinformation. And I've had enough of it. I've given you your chance to speak, and we give everybody a chance to come clean. Here's a chance for you to come clean. Some claim they have no choice and never wanted the job of disinfo agent.
I don't want this job.
Probably the most monitored individual on the planet.
Good, because you're fired, Patrick. And Dana, I'm afraid you're stuck in 2017, so get used to it.
When things are done, I don't intend to stick around.
Well, things are well done now, and this circus of disinfo agents can take a hike.
I'm not there's more than other, me out there. There's other light workers out there that are doing this job as well. And when they come across something that's too big, they'll get in touch with me.
Oh, God, more of you? Well, we'll bust them too if they cross our path.
Later, I set a record.
Oh, I think you all set records for the biggest bunch of BS of all time.
The CIA did an analysis of my book.
You're beginning to sound like Ben Davis.
So they went on to further testing and, in fact, gave me an IQ test. And let's just say I'm borderline genius.
We shot down the Galactic Federation of BS, exposing the lies to get to the truth. Late Night in the Midlands, exposing the truth, one show at a time. www.latenightintthemidlands.com.
And we're back.
And might I mention for those of you who are listening, don't forget to please donate and subscribe to keep us on the air.
Hey, I mean, I'm sorry to tell y'all this, but we need your help. We need your love, and we need your listenership. And I like our ratings tonight, so we're doing pretty good. And we know we're being loved. So guess what? We're going to move on into the 90s.
So with the 90s brings new attitudes and again more technology, equaling freedom, and more conflict again. Another decade in trauma.
Oh God, again.
So America is now shocked by the deadly Oklahoma City bombing. The nation becomes polarized as O.J. Simpson goes to trial.
You mean the Bronco?
The Republicans take control of the House of Representatives for the first time in a generation. A liberal consensus is also strengthening. And when Matthew Shepard is murdered in a homophobic attack, America unites in condemnation. Meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani orders a cleanup operation in New York City, and the new sitcom Friends is an overnight hit.
I like Friends.
Not only that, two Stanford graduates already have an eye on the future, also helping create revolutionary search engine for a fast-growing tool, the internet. Ooh. So what about the 90s? That nostalgia, what do we know? Now, I remember this one, really well. 90s, the Spice Girls, All Saints, and all of those poppy bands that are out there that are dreadful now.
Spice Girls. Blah. Didn't Eddie Murphy
Did I just
marry
admit
one?
that? Yeah, I think I did.
Eddie Murphy married one of them. Yeah, I remember. Eddie.
Mel B. Spice. Scary Spice.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Eddie wasn't scared.
The 90s was a decade of extreme contradictions, and contradictions, I should say. America built bigger and more elaborate homes, drove more expensive automobiles, then worked longer hours to pay for them. Americans also spent more, borrowed more, and went deeply into debt. They drank more coffee, smoked more cigars, and turned gambling into a national pastime. Children often struggled to deal with the pressures of adult world, to which they were increasingly exposed to, and many were forced to adjust to new step families. Divorce rates were skyrocketing high then too.
Yeah.
That was probably because of the promiscuous 80s. All these children came about.
We're not going to talk about that, okay?
Meanwhile, there were a disturbing number of adolescents and teenage boys went on deadly shooting rampages that left dozens dead or wounded and a troubled nation asking why. Even as Americans decried the rise of gun violence, guns nevertheless found their way into more households during the 1990s than ever before. And gays and lesbians came closer to entering the American mainstream, and they yet often faced violent assaults and anti-gay backlash. Times of extremes and uncertainties, Americans sought out spiritual direction, not only during returning to mainstream churches, but also exploring another array of spiritual alternatives. One of those who led the New Age spiritualism waned and prospered during the 1990s was...
I don't know, but I'm Odin. Ask the good Reverend Ira Robinson.
Deepak Chopra.
Okay.
Yeah, Oprah's spiritual guide.
Oh, the guru.
The time of gurus. Many Americans also relaxed, standards during the 90s, that especially regarding fashion. That's when workplaces adopt the casual Fridays.
Okay. That's when Fridays became a good place to go to after work, so you can go get a drink and get away from all those people.
Exactly.
All right, I'm ready to rock.
So what did No Doubt and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Bill Clinton, the Olsen twins, and Pulp Fiction all have in common?
No Doubt was good, somewhat. Fresh Prince was not that funny. Bill Clinton was a trickster, and the Olsen twins are still, they got ugly. And Pulp Fiction, I still have that one scene in my head where the guy was in the shirt. Oh, I'm leaving it alone.
So they basically shaped the 1990s. Anyone who was born in the late 80s or early 90s, millennials, is lucky enough to call themselves a true 90s baby. So great catchphrases like "What's up?" and the popularization of a previously unknown dialect of Valley Girl, like we were saying earlier. Off the heezy and get jiggy with it. If that doesn't make you smile, then just add a psych to every sentence.
Psych.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I wonder if he said that. So Bill Clinton tried to reinvent sex, or at least the definition of it, after he was caught with his pants down in the White House with intern Monica Lewinsky.
Didn't he lie to Congress and say he didn't have sex with that woman?
I did not have sex with that woman.
And wasn't he almost impeached by 2 days? He was impeached as a governor. Now he's getting impeached as a president, but never mind. We're going to leave that one alone. I'm sorry. I'm the political man.
So the 90s had some best music. The 90s saw the rise of best bands and artists of all times. We were educated by Lauryn Hill. Tupac told us to keep our head up. And Biggie Smalls reminded us why the ladies called him Big Poppa. Nirvana captured the 90s angst like no one else, while No Doubt made us wish we were all skaters from Cali. Mm-hmm. How could we forget our introduction to pop divas like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and Mandy Moore and Jessica Simpson?
Don't say Jessica Simpson. Please don't say
we
Jessica
found out
Simpson.
what makes Shania Twain feel like a woman and what fires up the Dixie Chicks too.
Okay.
There were also the divas, Whitney, Mariah, Celine, who sang and demanded our way into their hearts.
Oh, I can still hear that Titanic song. I'm done.
Oh, God. Shoot me now. And the boy bands, all that frosted blonde deliciousness. Did I just say that?
Oops. I think I need to jump.
No matter what genre, rock, rap, pop, punk, country, the music was just cool. One name says it all. Michael Jordan.
From North Carolina.
That pretty much sums up the whole sports. Sport in the 90s. That's it.
That's all you needed to know.
No, we don't know anything else.
Well, you also had Dennis Robinson and then.
I mean, Jordan was not alone too. We got Mark McGuire and Wayne Gretzky and Tiger Woods, and they're the legends too.
Yeah.
They didn't come with his downfalls.
And then also, don't forget, we had the Olympics when Jordan led the Dream Team and we won gold. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And of course, we had Played everywhere. The work clothes of outdoorsmen became fashion staple of every Gen Xer. Ripped jeans, bike shorts when walking, windbreakers, bandanas, combat boots. The 90s clothes were more style statements. And they were also comfortable.
Yeah, we always wore our combat boots.
It wasn't uncommon to see someone...
Martens.
That too, and who knows the pink light up sneakers and the pink overalls with one hook down, of course, and for the guys, backward Chicago Bulls hat.
Oh God, yeah, I love my Bulls back then though.
No, you got to remember the longest running TV shows, i.e. Friends, Seinfeld, Will and Grace, Dahmer and Greg, Suddenly Susan, ER, The Practice, Law and Order, the original. NYPD Blue, Touched by an Angel, and family-friendly shows like Seventh Heaven, Family Matters, Full House, Boy Meets World, Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
That was cool. I like
Dawson's Creek, My So-Called Life, Felicity, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Rugrats.
Oh, God.
Oh, dear. The Sopranos, Living in Color.
Living Color.
And many masterpieces like Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List and Matrix and Shakespeare in Love and The Lion King and Pocahontas and Beauty and the Beast and Toy Story. And the list could go on, not to mention Clueless and Home Alone.
Did you say Matrix? I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? Okay. I'm leaving that alone, Ira.
Not to mention the books. Goosebumps series.
Oh, yes. I remember that.
Where the wild things really are. And who hasn't taken the time to think about, all the places you go?
Oh, God, yeah.
What about the rainbow fish? And the adventures of the Bearstein Bears?
It's Bearstein now.
Oh.
Mandela effect.
Or what about the 90s was the decade where we also met a little boy who lived in the cupboard?
Huh?
Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
How could you remember that? And then, of course, we got the Beanie Babies and the Macarena.
Oh, my God. Don't play that song.
And then, of course, you got the familiar sound of dial-up as we waited to hear the welcome words, "You've got mail." And check our AOL inbox to see if our chat room buddies have IM'd you.
I remember AOL came on a 3.5 disc.
Summer was not without a super soaker or a sliding headfirst down an unstable slip and slide.
Oh my God, you're bringing
We were
back
big.
memories.
And then you got what about our culinary skills with the Easy Bake Oven? And growing our own Cabbage Patch dolls. Or going ham and skipping it, or something with a Nintendo 64.
Mm-hmm.
What about a Gidgepet or a Tamagotchi?
Oh my God.
You know, the almost apocalypse of the Y2K. We thought that the world was coming to an end.
It did.
It did?
Yeah, look at today's generation.
As so for the rest of us, we all partied like it was 1999. No matter what the strategy, we all survived and kept the party going.
All right.
Of course, there are plenty of things that I could also mention, like Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, Jurassic Park, Pokemon. But what else made the 90s most righteous decade ever? So that brings us to the end of the show, and we would like to thank you for listening to Encounters with the Neelys. If you enjoyed what you just heard, we hope that you'll pass along the web address to others seeking out abundant truth in news, information, and entertainment, lnmradionetwork.com. Be sure to subscribe and become a late nighter and check out where you can find the previous episodes of this show and many other shows like it. Or join our free LNM official chat room where you can chat and listen with like-minded people. And don't forget, we're also listener supported, so without you, there is no us. So please hit that donate button and join us as we bring many more shows to you.
And if you get busy with it, just get jiggy with it.
So this has been an LNM Radio Network show. Join us next week as we, each Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we can get jiggy with it.
Get jiggy with it, baby.
Get jiggy with it.
Yeah.
And bring you fun retro interactive radio that will be sure to blow your socks off.
All right, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.